A shy janitor gets stuck with a millionaire in an elevator and he didn't realize when he fell madly in love with her. Before we begin this story, drop a comment and tell me which city you're watching from. I'll check every comment. Enjoy. Sophia Reeves pressed the elevator button for the third time, her cleaning cart loaded with supplies rattling slightly as the ancient mechanism groaned to life. 23rd floor. Just 3 more offices to clean before she could call it a night and head home to her small apartment and the novel waiting on her nightstand. The elevator doors slid open with their usual wheeze, and she stepped inside, pulling her cart behind her. But before the doors could close, a hand shot out to stop them. "Hold that, please." The voice was smooth, confident, the kind that belonged to someone who expected to be obeyed. Sophia looked up to see a man in an expensive suit stepping into the elevator. He was tall, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She'd seen him around the building a few times over the past month. Always impeccably dressed, always checking his phone, always in a hurry. Another suit with more money than time. "Which floor?" she asked, finger hovering over the buttons. 27. The penthouse level. Of course. Sophia pressed the button and stepped back, suddenly conscious of her uniform, a plain navy polo and khakis that had seen better days. The elevator lurched upward with its familiar shudder. That's when everything went wrong. The elevator jerked once, twice, then ground to a complete stop. The lights dimmed and died, leaving them in complete darkness. "What the hell?" The man's voice cut through the sudden silence. Sophia's heart hammered in her chest. She'd always been claustrophobic, and being trapped in a small metal box suspended between floors was basically her nightmare scenario. But she forced herself to stay calm, reaching for the emergency phone. "It's dead," she said after a moment, her voice steadier than she felt. A soft glow filled the elevator as the man turned on his phone's flashlight. In the pale light, Sophia could see his face clearly for the first time. Strong jaw, worried expression, but somehow still impossibly put together even in an emergency. "I'm Victor," he said, extending his hand. "Sophia." She shook it briefly, surprised by the calluses on his palms. Not what she'd expected from someone who wore $1,000 suits. "Well, Sophia," Victor said, settling against the elevator wall with remarkable composure. "Looks like we're going to be here a while. Building management usually takes forever to respond to these things." "You seem to know a lot about building management," Sophia observed, raising an eyebrow. Victor's smile was quick and a little sheepish. "I've had experience with their inefficiency." Sophia studied him in the dim light. There was something about the way he said it that didn't quite ring true, but she decided not to push. They were stuck together. Might as well make the best of it. "So," she said, settling down on the floor beside her cart. "What takes you to the penthouse at this hour?" "Hot date." Something passed across Victor's face. "Something like that?" "Ah." Sophia nodded knowingly. "Let me guess, you're heading up to sweep some gorgeous woman off her feet with flowers and champagne?" Victor actually laughed at that. "Is that what you think? Isn't that how it always goes? Rich guy, expensive suit, penthouse apartment. You have the whole thing planned out. Candlelit dinner, maybe some jazz playing in the background. Very romantic cliché. You have quite the imagination." "I read a lot," Sophia said with a shrug. "Romance novels, mostly. I've seen every rich guy move in the book." "And what would you do differently?" The question surprised her. Sophia tilted her head, considering. "Honestly? Skip all the grand gestures. They're impressive, but they're also kind of impersonal. Like you looked up how to romance a woman online and followed a checklist. So what would impress you instead?" Sophia found herself really looking at him then. Victor seemed genuinely curious about her answer, leaning forward slightly in the dim light. I don't know. Something real, I guess. Something that shows you actually listen to her, that you notice the little things. Maybe she mentioned she loves old movies, so you find a way to watch one together. Or she's stressed about work, so you just sit with her. No agenda. Just being present. Victor was quiet for a long moment. That's not what most people would say. Most people haven't cleaned office buildings for 3 years and listen to how men actually talk about women when they think no one's listening, Sophia said dryly. Another laugh, this one deeper and more genuine. Fair point. They fell into a comfortable silence then, broken only by the distant sounds of the buildings settling around them. Sophia found herself stealing glances at Victor in the phone light. He was handsome, she'd have to be blind not to notice, but there was something else about him. He didn't seem like the typical rich guys she encountered in the building. Those men barely saw her, looking right through her like she was part of the furniture. Victor, though, actually seemed to see her. Can I ask you something? Victor said suddenly. Shoot. Why romance novels? Sophia felt her cheeks warm. I know they have a reputation for being silly, but… I'm not judging, Victor said quickly. I'm genuinely curious. Sophia considered her answer. I like that they're about hope. Even when everything seems impossible, even when the characters are their own worst enemies, there's always the possibility that things can work out. That people can change, can become better versions of themselves. You believe that? That people can really change? There was something in his voice that made Sophia look at him more carefully. I have to, she said quietly. Otherwise, what's the point? Victor was staring at her now, and Sophia felt something shift in the air between them. It was like the moment before lightning strikes, charged and electric and full of possibility. Then his phone rang. The spell broke as Victor answered with a clipped, yes. Sophia couldn't make out the words on the other end, but Victor's expression grew increasingly tense. I understand, he said finally. I'll be there as soon as I can. He hung up and ran a hand through his hair, messing up that perfect style. Work crisis, he said by way of explanation. On a Friday night? Your boss sounds like a real piece of work. Victor's smile was rueful. You have no idea. Before Sophia could respond, the elevator shuddered back to life. The lights came on, and they were moving again. Looks like we're rescued, Victor said, but he didn't sound particularly happy about it. The elevator dinged at Sophia's floor. She stood and pulled her cart toward the doors, then paused and looked back at Victor. Good luck with your romantic cliché, she said with a small smile. Sophia, Victor called as the doors started to close. Yeah. It was nice meeting you. The doors slid shut before she could respond, but Sophia found herself smiling as she pushed her cart down the hallway. For a brief moment in that dark elevator, she'd felt seen. Really seen. It was a feeling she wasn't used to, and she found herself hoping she might run into Victor again. She had no idea just how soon that would happen. Monday morning came too quickly, as Monday mornings always did. Sophia arrived at the building at her usual 6 a.m., beating the rush of office workers by several hours. She liked the quiet of the early morning, the way the building felt like it belonged to her before everyone else arrived to claim their pieces of it. She was sorting through her supplies in the basement storage room when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, purposeful steps that didn't belong to any of the building's regular early birds. Sophia? She turned to find Victor standing in the doorway, looking entirely too good for someone who should theoretically still be in bed after his late night. Victor, she said, surprised. What are you doing here so early? I could ask you the same thing. I work here, Sophia said with a laugh. That's my excuse. What's yours? Victor seemed to consider his answer for a moment. Building inspection. I'm consulting on some renovations. At 6 in the morning? Best time to see the place without interruption. Sophia studied his face in the fluorescent light. There was something he wasn't telling her, but she couldn't put her finger on what. How did Friday night go, by the way? With your girlfriend? My girlfriend? Victor looked confused for a moment, then his expression cleared. Oh, right. It was fine. Just fine? That's not exactly a ringing endorsement for romance novel material. Maybe I should have asked for your advice first. Sophia felt an unexpected pang at his words. The reminder of his relationship shouldn't have bothered her. She barely knew the man, but somehow it did. Well, she said, forcing a bright smile. Next time you're stuck in an elevator with someone, you'll know better. Actually, Victor said, stepping closer. I was hoping to ask you something. Sophia's heart did a little skip. Oh. The building management mentioned they're having issues with some of the equipment up on the higher floors. Elevators acting up, climate control problems, that sort of thing. You must notice things like that in your work. The disappointment was swift and sharp. Of course. He wasn't here to see her, he was here for information. Sure, Sophia said, keeping her voice neutral. What do you want to know? For the next 20 minutes, Victor asked detailed questions about the building's maintenance issues. Sophia found herself answering despite her irritation. He was thorough, professional, and seemed genuinely interested in making improvements. The elevator we were stuck in Friday isn't the only one having problems, Sophia said as they walked through the lobby. The one on the east side has been making weird noises for weeks. And don't get me started on the heating system. Half the offices are freezing while the other half are like saunas. Victor was taking notes on his phone. That's helpful. Really helpful. I'm glad my suffering can be useful to someone, Sophia said dryly. Victor looked up from his phone. I didn't mean it like that. Didn't you? They stood there for a moment, looking at each other across the marble expanse of the lobby. Sophia felt that same electric tension from Friday night, but this time it was tinged with disappointment. I should get back to work, she said finally. Sophia, wait. But she was already walking away, pushing her cart toward the elevators with perhaps more force than necessary. She didn't look back, but she could feel Victor watching her until the elevator doors closed. The interaction left her unsettled for the rest of the day. She told herself it was stupid to feel disappointed. Victor was clearly successful, clearly out of her league, and clearly taken. The fact that he'd sought her out for building maintenance advice rather than what? A date? It was ridiculous to even think about. But she couldn't stop thinking about their conversation in the elevator. The way he'd listened to her, really listened, like her opinions mattered. The way he'd looked at her when she talked about believing people could change. Sophia was so lost in thought that she almost missed the man standing by her locker when she went to grab her things at the end of her shift. Carlos, she said, her stomach sinking. What are you doing here? Carlos Mendoza had worked at the building for 2 years longer than Sophia, and for the first 6 months of her employment, they dated. It had ended badly when Sophia discovered he'd been seeing 2 other women at the same time, and their professional relationship had been strained ever since. Heard you made a new friend, Carlos said, leaning against the lockers with his arms crossed. I don't know what you're talking about. Rich guy in the expensive suit. Saw you 2 talking this morning. Sophia pulled her jacket from her locker and shut the door harder than necessary. So maybe you should be careful about getting too friendly with the building's clients. Wouldn't want management to get the wrong idea about what kind of services you're providing. Sophia whirled around, her cheeks burning. Excuse me? I'm just saying, Sophia. You've got a good thing here. Steady job, decent pay. Wouldn't want you to mess it up by forgetting your place. My place? You know what I mean. Sophia didn't know what he meant, and it made her want to punch something. Preferably Carlos's smug face. "Stay out of my business, Carlos," she said instead, pushing past him toward the exit. "I'm trying to help you," he called after her. "I don't need your help." But as Sophia walked home through the city streets, Carlos's words echoed in her head. She'd worked hard to build a life for herself, had fought for every opportunity and every small promotion. The last thing she needed was some vindictive ex-boyfriend spreading rumors about her professional conduct. The smart thing would be to avoid Victor entirely. Keep her head down, do her job, and pretend that brief moment of connection in the elevator had never happened. Too bad Sophia had never been particularly good at doing the smart thing. Over the next 2 weeks, Victor became a regular fixture in the building. Always there early, always with some excuse about checking on repairs or consulting with contractors. Sophia tried to avoid him, but the building wasn't that big, and their paths kept crossing. Wednesday morning, she found him in the 22nd break room, staring at the ancient coffee machine with a look of deep concentration. "It's been broken for 3 months, Sophia said from the doorway. Victor turned, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Sophia, I was hoping I'd run into you. Were you?" "The building management mentioned they're finally going to replace this," he said, gesturing at the coffee machine. "I wanted to get your opinion on what would work better for the employees." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "My opinion? You know this building better than anyone. You see how people actually use these spaces." It was a reasonable explanation, but Sophia still felt like there was something more going on. "Why do you care so much about coffee machines and climate control? What kind of consulting do you do exactly?" Victor's pause was just a fraction too long. "Property management. Making sure buildings run efficiently." What does that mean?" "It means I think you're not telling me the whole truth." Victor stepped closer, and Sophia caught a hint of his cologne. Something expensive but not overwhelming. "What do you think I'm hiding?" "I don't know yet," Sophia said honestly. "But I intend to find out." Their eyes met and held, and Sophia felt that familiar electric charge. It would be so easy to step closer, to see what would happen if she just... "Sophia!" They both turned to see Carlos standing in the break room doorway, his expression thunderous. "Mr. Peterson wants to see you," Carlos said, his eyes never leaving Victor. Sophia's stomach dropped. Mr. Peterson was the building manager, and being called to his office was never good news. "Right now. Right now." Sophia glanced at Victor, who was watching the exchange with a frown. "I'll talk to you later about the coffee machine," she said. "Sophia," Victor called as she reached the doorway. "Yeah. Whatever this is about, it'll be fine." How could he sound so certain? Sophia wondered as she followed Carlos to the elevator. And why did she want so badly to believe him? Mr. Peterson's office was exactly what you'd expect from a man who'd been building manager for 20 years. Wood paneling, framed certificates, and the lingering smell of stale cigarettes despite the building's no-smoking policy. "Sit down, Sophia," Mr. Peterson said without looking up from his paperwork. Sophia sat, her hands folded in her lap. Carlos positioned himself by the door like a guard. "I've been hearing some concerning reports about your conduct," Mr. Peterson said finally, looking up with tired eyes. "What kind of reports?" "Fraternizing with building clients during work hours. Neglecting your duties to have personal conversations." Sophia's jaw tightened. She didn't need to look at Carlos to know where this was coming from. "That's not true," she said. "Carlos here says he's witnessed multiple inappropriate interactions between you and a building tenant." "Inappropriate?" Sophia's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "I answered questions about building maintenance. That's hardly inappropriate." "Sophia," Mr. Peterson said with a sigh. "You're a good worker. You're punctual, reliable, and you do quality work. I don't want to lose you. But this building serves some very important clients. Wealthy, influential people who expect a certain level of discretion from our staff. Sophia felt her cheeks burn. Meaning they don't want to be bothered by overly friendly cleaning staff. They want to go about their business without having to make small talk with the help. The help. The words hit Sophia like a slap. She'd always known how people like Mr. Peterson saw her, but hearing it said so plainly still stung. I understand, she said quietly. But I'm glad we're on the same page. Mr. Peterson was already looking back down at his paperwork, dismissing her. Carlos, make sure Sophia understands what's expected of her. Sophia stood on shaky legs and walked out of the office, Carlos close behind. In the hallway, he grabbed her arm. I told you to be careful, he said. Sophia jerked away from his grip. You did this. You went to Peterson. I was protecting you. Protecting me? Or making sure I don't get too far above my station? Carlos's expression hardened. You want to throw away your career for some rich guy who's just slumming it with the help? Go ahead. But don't say I didn't warn you. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the charming coworker she'd once dated, but a petty, vindictive man who couldn't stand to see her happy. If you made it this far, type coffee in the comments. It helps me know the real supporters. You're pathetic, she said quietly and walked away. But as Sophia returned to her cleaning cart, Carlos's words replayed again in her head. Was Victor just slumming it? Was she just a novelty to him, something amusing to distract him from his real life? The thought made her stomach churn, because deep down she was afraid it might be true. Sophia spent the rest of the week avoiding Victor entirely. It wasn't easy. He seemed to be everywhere, always appearing just as she was finishing up an area or heading to her next assignment. But she managed it by changing her schedule, taking different routes through the building, and keeping her interactions strictly professional when avoidance was impossible. It was working fine until Friday afternoon, when she literally ran into him. Sophia was rushing to finish the executive level before the weekend, her cart loaded with supplies, when she rounded a corner and collided with someone coming from the opposite direction. Papers flew everywhere, and Sophia found herself caught against a solid chest, strong hands steadying her. Careful, Victor said, his voice warm and familiar. Sophia looked up into those blue eyes and felt her resolve waver. He smelled like soap and expensive cologne, and his hands were still on her arms, warm through her uniform shirt. Sorry, she said, stepping back quickly. I didn't see you. No harm done. Victor was already kneeling to gather the scattered papers. These look important. Sophia crouched beside him, reaching for the documents. Her fingers brushed his as they both reached for the same paper, and she felt that familiar electric jolt. Building schematics, she said, glancing at the papers. Are you doing a full renovation? Something like that. Victor's voice was strangely tight. Sophia looked at him more closely. He seemed tense, almost nervous. Victor is everything. Sophia Reeves? They both looked up to see a tall woman in an expensive suit approaching them. She was stunning, glossy black hair, perfect makeup, the kind of effortless elegance that came with money and breeding. I'm sorry, the woman said with a cool smile. I didn't mean to interrupt. Victor stood quickly, the papers clutched in his hands. Isabella, what are you doing here? Isabella. Sophia felt something cold settle in her stomach. This had to be the girlfriend. The one Victor visited in the penthouse. The one he was supposed to be having candlelit dinners with. I was in the neighborhood, Isabella said, her eyes moving between Victor and Sophia with obvious curiosity. Thought I'd stop by. Sophia, This is Isabella Reyes, Victor said stiffly. Isabella, Sophia Reeves. Isabella extended a perfectly manicured hand. Victor's told me so much about you. Has he? Sophia shook the offered hand briefly, trying to ignore the way Isabella's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. All good things, I assure you. He mentioned you've been very helpful with the building inspection. Sophia glanced at Victor, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Just doing my job. Of course. Isabella's smile grew sharper. Well, Victor, shall we go? We have that dinner reservation. Right. Victor looked at Sophia, and she could swear she saw regret in his eyes. Sophia, thank you for everything. Sophia watched them walk away together, Victor's hand on the small of Isabella's back in a gesture that spoke of familiarity and intimacy. They looked perfect together, two beautiful, wealthy people who moved in the same rarefied world. Sophia gathered her cleaning supplies with mechanical precision, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. This was exactly what she'd expected, wasn't it? Victor was taken, possibly engaged, and she was just the amusing cleaning lady he'd chatted with a few times. So why did it hurt so much? That evening, Sophia sat in her small apartment with her latest romance novel, but she couldn't concentrate on the words. Her mind kept drifting back to Victor and Isabella, to the way they'd looked together. She thought about Victor's nervousness, the papers scattered on the ground, Isabella's calculating smile. Something wasn't adding up, but Sophia couldn't put her finger on what. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Mia. Movie night tomorrow? I'll bring wine and we can trash talk your horrible ex. Sophia smiled despite her mood. Sounds perfect. Fair warning though, I might have more than one ex to trash talk. Ooh, tell me everything. Sophia stared at the phone for a long moment, then typed, nothing to tell. Just a reminder that I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a hopeless romantic. There's a difference. Is there? Idiots don't learn from their mistakes. Hopeless romantics keep believing in love despite all evidence to the contrary. Sophia laughed, feeling marginally better. Mia had a way of putting things in perspective. So which one am I? Jury's still out. But I'm leaning toward hopeless romantic. Great. That's so much better. It is actually. Hopeless romantics get the best stories. Sophia was still smiling when she fell asleep that night, the romance novel forgotten on her chest. But her dreams were filled with blue eyes and expensive suits, with elevators and scattered papers and women who belonged in Victor's world in a way Sophia never could. She woke up Saturday morning more determined than ever to forget about Victor Castillo and focus on her real life. The life where she worked hard, saved money, and didn't pine after men who were completely out of her league. It was a good plan. Too bad Victor had other ideas. Sophia was elbow-deep in cleaning the executive conference room Monday morning when she heard voices in the hallway. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the voices were getting louder, and one of them sounded familiar. Absolutely unacceptable. The timeline has already been delayed twice. Sophia froze. That was Victor's voice, but it sounded different. Harder. More authoritative. Sir, the mechanical issues are more extensive than we originally thought, came another voice. The previous owners clearly neglected basic maintenance for years. That's why we're here, Jenkins. To fix what they couldn't be bothered to maintain properly. Sophia crept closer to the door, her curiosity overriding her better judgment. What about the staff transition? The other voice, Jenkins, asked. We'll honor existing contracts for now. Anyone who wants to stay and can meet our standards is welcome to. Anyone who can't. Victor's voice trailed off meaningfully. And the building manager? Peterson goes. He's been skimming from the maintenance budget for years. I want him out by the end of the week. Sophia's blood ran cold. Peterson was being fired? And what did Victor mean by previous owners? What about the cleaning staff? Jenkins asked. Sophia held her breath. Most of them can stay, Victor said. Though I want background checks run on everyone. And that Carlos Mendoza, fire him. Today. On what grounds? I don't need grounds. I want him gone. Sophia's mind was reeling. Victor was talking like he owned the building. But that was impossible. The building belonged to Pemberton Properties, a huge real estate company. Didn't it? Sir? Jenkins's voice was getting closer to the door. Sophia quickly moved away from the entrance, grabbing her cleaning supplies and trying to look busy. But her hands were shaking as she sprayed down the conference table. Victor owned the building. Or was buying it. Or something. That's why he was always here, always asking about maintenance issues. That's why he knew so much about building management's inefficiency. And he just ordered Carlos fired. Sophia wasn't sure how she felt about that. Part of her was grimly satisfied. Carlos had been making her life miserable for months. But another part of her was terrified. If Victor could fire Carlos that easily, what did that mean for her job? Sophia? She spun around to find Victor standing in the doorway, looking as polished as ever in another expensive suit. Victor, she managed. I was just finishing up in here. Actually, I was hoping we could talk. Sophia's mouth went dry. About what? About the building. About some changes that are coming. Sophia set down her cleaning spray with hands that weren't quite steady. What kind of changes? Victor stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Sophia suddenly felt trapped, cornered, like a mouse facing down a cat. Sophia, Victor said gently, how long have you worked here? 3 years. Her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. And you love this job? Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. Victor sighed and ran a hand through his hair. This is harder than I thought it would be. Just say it, Sophia said, lifting her chin. You're firing me. What? No. Victor looked genuinely shocked. Sophia, why would you think that? Because I heard you talking to that Jenkins guy. About firing people, about background checks. About how you're taking over the building. Victor stared at her for a long moment, then sank into one of the conference room chairs. How much did you hear? Enough. Sophia remained standing, her arms crossed defensively. You bought the building, didn't you? That's why you've been here so much. That's why you know so much about the maintenance issues. Yes. The simple admission hit Sophia like a punch. So all those questions about coffee machines and heating systems, that wasn't consulting. That was you deciding whether to keep me around. Sophia, it's not like that. Isn't it? Sophia's voice was rising despite her efforts to stay calm. You've been lying to me this whole time. Pretending to be just another tenant when you're actually my boss. I never meant for it to go this far. What? Talking to the help? Slumming it with the cleaning lady? Victor stood abruptly. Don't you dare reduce what happened between us to that. Then what was it? Sophia demanded. What was any of this? Some kind of game. No game, Victor said quietly. You want the truth? I bought this building 6 months ago. It was supposed to be a simple acquisition. Buy it, renovate it, flip it, or rent it out for twice what I paid. Business. Sophia waited, her heart pounding. But then I got stuck in an elevator with this woman, Victor continued. This brilliant, funny, beautiful woman who saw right through every wall I'd ever built. Who made me laugh and made me think and made me want to be better than I was. Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. So what happened? You remembered I was just the cleaning lady? I remembered I was lying to you every time we talked, Victor said. I kept meaning to tell you the truth, but the longer I waited, the harder it got. How do you tell someone you've been deceiving them from the beginning? You could start with, "I'm sorry," Sophia said. "I'm sorry." Victor's voice was raw. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. I never meant for it to happen this way." Sophia stared at him, seeing the pain in his eyes, the genuine regret. Part of her wanted to believe him, wanted to forget about the lies and the deception and focus on the connection they'd shared. But she'd been down this road before. She'd believed Carlos when he said he loved her, believed him right up until she found out about the other women. "I need to go," she said quietly. "Sophia, please. Let me explain." "You just did." Sophia gathered her cleaning supplies, not looking at him. "You bought the building. You lied to me. You've been playing some kind of game where you get to be a regular guy and I get to be your entertainment. That's not what this was." Sophia paused at the door and looked back at him. "Then what was it, Victor? Because from where I'm standing it looks like you had your fun with the help and now it's time to get back to your real life." She walked out before he could respond, leaving Victor alone in the conference room with the weight of his mistakes. Sophia made it exactly 3 blocks before she had to stop and lean against a building, her whole body shaking. She'd walked out. Just walked out of her job without giving notice, without thinking about the consequences. But what choice did she have? How could she continue working there, seeing Victor every day, pretending that nothing had happened between them? Her phone rang. Victor's number appeared on the screen. Sophia hit decline and kept walking. It rang again. And again. Finally, she turned off the phone altogether. When Sophia arrived at her apartment, she found Mia sitting on her front steps with a bag of takeout Chinese food and a bottle of wine. "Rough day?" Mia asked, taking in Sophia's expression. "How did you know?" "Best friend intuition. Plus you're home at noon on a Monday looking like someone kicked your dog." Mia stood and enveloped Sophia in a hug. "Come on. Let's go upstairs and you can tell me everything." An hour later, Sophia had spilled the entire story while demolishing half the lo mein. Mia listened without interruption, occasionally refilling Sophia's wine glass. "So let me get this straight," Mia said when Sophia finished. "This guy, who you've been crushing on for weeks, turns out to be the new owner of your building. He's been lying about who he is, but he claims it's because he was afraid to tell you the truth. And when you confronted him, he basically confessed his feelings for you." "That's not what happened." "That's exactly what happened." Mia pointed a chopstick at her. "The question is, do you believe him?" Sophia slumped back on her couch. "It doesn't matter if I believe him." "Of course it matters. Mia, we live in completely different worlds. He's a millionaire who buys buildings for fun. I'm a cleaning lady who just walked out on her job. Even if his feelings were real, which is a big if, what kind of future could we possibly have?" "The kind where you find out," Mia said simply. "What does that mean?" "It means you won't know until you try. Look, Sophia, I've watched you date guys who treated you like crap because they were safe. Carlos, David, that guy from the coffee shop whose name I can't even remember. They were all in your league and they were all complete losers." Sophia winced. Mia wasn't wrong. "Maybe it's time to take a chance on someone who might actually be worth it," Mia continued. "He lied to me." "Yeah, he did. And that sucks. But think about why he lied. Was it to hurt you? To take advantage of you? Or was it because he was scared?" Sophia considered this. Victor had seemed genuinely remorseful, genuinely afraid of losing her good opinion. But then again, he was a successful businessman. Wasn't manipulation part of the job description? "I don't know," Sophia said finally. "Then find out. Talk to him." "I can't. I walked out. I don't even have a job anymore." "So get a new job. Sophia, you're smart, you're hardworking, you're reliable. Any company would be lucky to have you." Sophia wanted to believe that, but the job market was tough, and she didn't have the luxury of being unemployed for long. Her phone buzzed. She turned it back on an hour ago, and she'd been getting a steady stream of texts from Victor. Please let me explain. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. Just give me a chance to make this right. Sophia, please. The latest one was different. I'm not giving up on us. Sophia stared at the message for a long time. Like they were actually in us. Like they had something real that was worth fighting for. What does your gut tell you? Mia asked quietly. Sophia's gut told her she was falling in love with a man who was completely wrong for her. It told her she was setting herself up for heartbreak on a scale she'd never experienced before. It also told her that Victor's feelings for her were real. I think I'm in trouble, Sophia said. Good trouble or bad trouble? I don't know yet. Mia smiled. The best kind of trouble usually starts that way. Sophia was still staring at Victor's message when her phone rang. But it wasn't Victor calling. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello. Ms. Reeves? This is Margaret Wilson from Pinnacle Property Management. I understand you're looking for a new position. Sophia sat up straighter. I'm sorry, who is this? We're a property management company, and we've heard excellent things about your work. We'd love to discuss a position with us. Significantly better pay and benefits than your current situation. Sophia's eyes widened. How did you get my number? We were referred by a former colleague. Are you available to meet tomorrow morning? Sophia looked at Mia, who was watching with raised eyebrows. Yes, I'm available. After Sophia hung up, Mia leaned forward. Well, job interview tomorrow. Better pay, better benefits. Sophia frowned. But I never applied anywhere. How did they even know I was looking? Mia's expression was knowing. Gee, I wonder who could have made that happen? Sophia's stomach dropped. You think Victor? I think your millionaire boyfriend is trying to take care of you. He's not my boyfriend. Yet, Mia said with a grin. Sophia stared at her phone, torn between gratitude and irritation. If Victor had arranged this job interview, it meant he was looking out for her. It also meant he was trying to control her life. One thing was certain, Victor Castillo was more complicated than she'd ever imagined. The job interview went better than Sophia could have hoped. Margaret Wilson was professional, kind, and offered a salary that was nearly double what Sophia had been making. The position came with health insurance, vacation time, and opportunities for advancement. It was everything Sophia had dreamed of. So why did she feel so empty walking out of the Pinnacle Property Management offices? Because you know Victor arranged this, her inner voice said. Because you know you're just another problem for him to solve. Sophia was sitting in a coffee shop near her apartment, staring at Margaret Wilson's business card, when someone slid into the seat across from her. Isabella, Victor's girlfriend, or whatever she was, looked as perfectly put together as she had on Friday, but there was something different about her expression. Less cool composure, more genuine concern. I hope you don't mind, Isabella said. Victor gave me your address. I wanted to talk to you. Sophia bristled. If Victor sent you to... Victor doesn't know I'm here. Isabella's smile was rueful. In fact, if he knew, he'd lock me in my apartment to keep me from interfering. Interfering with what? With whatever's happening between you two. Isabella studied Sophia's face. He's miserable, you know. Sophia's chest tightened. That's not my problem. Isn't it? Look, Isabella. Let me tell you a story, Isabella interrupted. About a little boy who lost his parents when he was 12 years old. Sophia felt her defenses waver. What? Car accident. Victor went to live with his uncle, a man who saw business opportunities instead of grief. Who taught Victor that success was the only thing that mattered, that feelings were weaknesses to be exploited. Sophia's throat felt tight. Why are you telling me this? Because Victor has spent 20 years building walls around his heart. Walls so high and so thick that most people can't even see there's a person inside them. Isabella leaned forward. But somehow, you found a way through. I don't understand. Victor's been different since he met you. Lighter. More human. The man I talked to yesterday, the one who was pacing his apartment like a caged animal because he'd hurt someone he cared about, that's not the Victor the first grew up with. Sophia shook her head. I still don't understand why you're here. Shouldn't you be trying to get rid of the competition? Isabella laughed, a sound full of genuine amusement. Competition? Sophia, Victor is my brother. The words hit Sophia like being punched. Your brother? Half-brother, technically. We share a father. Isabella's smile was soft. Victor was protecting my reputation by not introducing me as his sister. I'm engaged to a man whose family is traditional. They wouldn't approve of me spending time alone with a man who isn't my fiancé, even if that man is my brother. Sophia stared at her, mind reeling. But you two seemed so close? We are. Victor practically raised me after our father died. He's the only family I have left. Oh my God. Sophia buried her face in her hands. I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a woman who's been hurt before, who has every reason to be cautious. Sophia looked up at Isabella. How do you know about that? Because Victor told me. About your ex, about the things he said to you. About how you've been made to feel like you don't deserve better. Victor said that? Victor said a lot of things. Most of them unrepeatable in polite company. Isabella's expression grew serious. Sophia, my brother has made mistakes. He should have told you who he was from the beginning. But his feelings for you are real. Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. How can you be so sure? Because in 20 years I have never seen Victor cry. Not when our father died, not when his business almost failed, not ever. Isabella reached across the table and squeezed Sophia's hand. But he cried yesterday when he told me he'd lost you. The tears Sophia had been holding back finally spilled over. I don't know what to do. What does your heart tell you? Sophia thought about Victor's laugh in the elevator, the way he'd listened to her talk about romance novels without judgment. She thought about his hands steadying her when she'd run into him, the electricity she felt every time they touched. My heart tells me I'm falling in love with him, Sophia whispered. Then trust it. But what if it's not enough? What if we're too different? Isabella smiled. What if you're exactly what he needs? Sophia stared out the coffee shop window, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk. Normal people with normal lives and normal problems. She could be one of them. She could take the job at Pinnacle Property Management, forget about Victor Castillo, and build a safe, predictable life. Or she could take the biggest risk of her life and see where it led. Isabella? Yes. If I wanted to find Victor right now, where would he be? Isabella's smile was radiant. He's at the building. He's been there all day, apparently trying to fix everything he thinks he broke. Sophia stood up, her decision made. Thank you. For what? For giving me the kick in the ass I needed. Isabella laughed. Good luck, Sophia. And for what it's worth, I think you're exactly what my brother needs. Sophia was already heading for the door, her heart pounding with fear and hope and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could have her happy ending after all. Sophia found Victor exactly where Isabella said he would be, standing in the lobby of the building that had brought them together, talking intently with a man in a hard hat. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the exhaustion in the way he held himself. He looked up as she approached, and the expression that crossed his face was so hopeful and vulnerable that Sophia felt her remaining defenses crumble. Sophia. Her name was a prayer on his lips. Victor. She stopped a few feet away, suddenly unsure of herself. I met your sister today. Victor's jaw tightened. Isabella had no right to tell me the truth? To explain why you felt like you had to lie to me? Victor stared at her for a long moment, then dismissed the contractor with a quiet word. When they were alone in the echoing lobby, he turned back to Sophia. I should have told you myself, he said. About Isabella, about the building, about everything. I was scared. Of what? Of losing you before I ever really had you. Victor's voice was raw with honesty. Of you looking at me the way you're looking at me now. How am I looking at you? Like you can see right through me. Like you know every mistake I've ever made. Sophia stepped closer. I can see you, Victor. I've been able to see you since that first night in the elevator. The question is, are you ready to let me? I don't know how, Victor admitted. I've spent so long keeping people at arm's length that I don't remember how to let anyone close. You let me close that night. In the elevator, when you asked me about romance novels and actually listened to my answer. When you looked at me like I mattered. You do matter. Victor's voice was fierce. You matter more than anyone or anything has mattered to me in years. Sophia felt her heart skip. Victor. I know I don't deserve another chance, he continued. I know I lied to you, I know I hurt you. But Sophia, I'm asking anyway. I'm asking because the alternative, losing you completely, is something I can't live with. Sophia studied his face, seeing the fear there, the hope, the love he was too afraid to name. I'm leaving. What? Please, I got a promising job offer and I'm taking the job, Sophia said. Because I interviewed well and I deserve it and I'm damn good at what I do. A slow smile spread across Victor's face. Yes, you are. She finally smiled back. And if we're going to do this, if we're going to try to make something work between us, then we need to establish some ground rules. Victor's smile widened, and she could tell the exact moment the exhale left his lips. Such as, no more lies. No more half-truths or omissions. If something's bothering you, if you're scared, if you're thinking about buying my apartment building, you tell me. Victor laughed, the sound lighter than Sophia had ever heard it. I promise. No more lies. And no more trying to fix my life without asking. I can take care of myself, Victor. I've been doing it for years. I know you can. It's one of the things Victor stopped himself. One of the things you what? Victor took a deep breath. One of the things I love about you. The words hung in the air between them, powerful and terrifying and absolutely true. Victor, Sophia whispered. I love you, he said again, stronger this time. I love your laugh and your intelligence and the way you see right through all my bullshit. I love that you read romance novels and believe in happy endings. I love that you made me want to be a better man. Sophia felt tears streaming down her cheeks. You already are a better man. Only with you. Sophia closed the distance between them, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. Then stay with me. Victor's arms came around her, pulling her against him like he was afraid she might disappear. Is that a yes? That's a yes to trying. A yes to seeing where this goes. A yes to believing that maybe, just maybe, we can make this work. Victor's smile was radiant. I'll take it. And then he was kissing her, right there in the lobby of the building where they'd first met, and Sophia thought that maybe the romance novels had it right after all. Maybe love really could conquer all the obstacles and differences and complications. Maybe sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got your happily ever after. But as Sophia kissed Victor back with all the hope and love in her heart, She had no idea that their biggest test was still to come. 3 weeks later, Sophia was settling into her new routine. The job at Pinnacle Property Management was everything Margaret Wilson had promised: challenging, rewarding, and with colleagues who treated her as an equal rather than invisible help. She had her own office, her own business cards, and a salary that allowed her to start thinking about maybe getting a better apartment. More importantly, she had Victor. They were taking things slowly: dinner dates, long walks through the city, quiet evenings in Victor's penthouse talking about everything and nothing. Sophia was learning about the man behind the successful businessman facade, his dry sense of humor, his fierce loyalty to the people he cared about, his surprising love of old movies and terrible cooking shows. Victor, in turn, was discovering Sophia's world, her Friday night book club, her volunteer work at the local animal shelter, her friendship with Mia that involved a lot of wine and even more laughter. It was working. Against all odds, despite their different backgrounds and the rocky start, they were building something real together. Which, of course, was when everything went to hell. Sophia was reviewing building maintenance reports when her desk phone rang. Sophia Reeves. Sophia? It's Margaret. I need you in my office right away. Something in Margaret's tone made Sophia's stomach clench. Is everything okay? Just come to my office, please. Sophia found Margaret sitting behind her desk looking deeply uncomfortable, a red folder open in front of her. Sophia, please sit down. Margaret, what's going on? I received a call this morning. From a Carlos Mendoza. He claims to be a former colleague of yours. Sophia's blood turned to ice. What did he want? He had some concerns about your professional conduct. Concerns? Margaret opened the folder and Sophia could see photographs inside. Her stomach dropped. He provided these photos, taken over the past few weeks. Sophia leaned forward and immediately wished she hadn't. The photos showed her and Victor together, walking into his building, holding hands in a restaurant, kissing outside her apartment. Margaret! Sophia, is it true that you're involved with Victor Castillo? There was no point in denying it. The photos were damning enough. Yes. The Victor Castillo who owns multiple properties that we manage for him? Sophia's mouth went dry. You manage properties for Victor? Pinnacle Property Management has had a contract with Castillo Holdings for 3 years. We manage 12 of his properties, including the building where you used to work. Sophia stared at Margaret, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. You're saying Victor is a client here? One of our biggest clients. And you think I got this job because I'm sleeping with him? Margaret's silence was answer enough. Sophia felt the walls closing in around her. Margaret, I swear to you, I had no idea. When I interviewed here, I didn't know about any connection to Victor. Sophia, I want to believe you. But these photos, the timing of your hiring, it looks bad. I know how it looks, but... And then there's this. Margaret pulled a document from the folder. A copy of a purchase order Victor placed last week. For renovations to your apartment building. Sophia's heart sank. Victor had bought her apartment building too? I didn't know, Sophia whispered. Sophia, I'm sorry. I really am. But I have to think about the company's reputation. If word gets out that we hired someone because of her relationship with a client. You're firing me. I'm placing you on administrative leave while we investigate. If everything checks out, if you really didn't know about the connection, then we'll discuss your return. Sophia stood on shaky legs. How long? 2 weeks. Maybe more. Sophia nodded numbly and walked out of Margaret's office, barely aware of the curious stares from her colleagues. She gathered her personal items from her desk mechanically, her mind reeling. Carlos had done this. Somehow, he'd found out about her relationship with Victor and used it to destroy her new life. But how had he gotten the photos? How had he even known where she worked? Sophia was waiting for the elevator when her phone rang. Victor's name appeared on the screen. Sophia? I just heard. Isabella told me she saw Margaret Wilson at lunch and… You bought my apartment building, Sophia said quietly. Silence on the other end of the line. Sophia. How long have you owned it, Victor? 2 weeks. And you didn't think to mention it? I was going to tell you. I just wanted to fix the heating first, make sure the building was safe. Stop. Sophia closed her eyes. Just stop. Sophia, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been manipulating my life from the beginning. How everything I thought I'd accomplished on my own was really just you pulling strings behind the scenes. That's not what this is. Isn't it? Sophia's voice was rising, and people were starting to stare. She lowered it to a harsh whisper. You arranged my job interview, Victor. At a company that manages your properties. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I didn't arrange anything. They called you because you made sure they knew I was available. Sophia felt tears threatening and blinked them back angrily. God, I'm such an idiot. I actually thought this was real. It is real. Sophia, what we have is real. What we have is a fantasy. A game where you get to play the guy and I get to play the girl who doesn't know she's being managed. That's not true. Sophia stepped into the elevator, grateful when the doors started to close. Yes, it is. And the worst part is, I think you actually believe your own lies. The call ended as the elevator descended, taking Sophia away from the job she'd thought she'd earned and the dreams she'd thought she could trust. By the time she reached the ground level, Sophia had made her decision. It was time to stop playing Victor's game and start taking control of her own life. Even if it meant walking away from the only man she'd ever loved. Sophia spent the next 5 days in her apartment, alternating between rage, heartbreak, and a numbness that scared her more than the other emotions. She ignored Victor's calls, deleted his texts without reading them, and pretended that the flowers he kept sending weren't making her apartment smell like a funeral home. Mia staged an intervention on Thursday night, armed with pizza and a bottle of tequila. Okay, Mia said, settling onto Sophia's couch. I've given you 5 days to wallow. Time's up. I'm not wallowing. You're wearing the same pajamas you had on when I called yesterday. That's wallowing. Sophia looked down at her ratty NYU t-shirt and flannel pants. They're comfortable. Sophia, talk to me. What really happened? Sophia told her everything, about the photos, about Carlos's sabotage, about discovering that Victor owned the company she worked for and the building she lived in. So he's been taking care of you, Mia said when Sophia finished. He's been controlling me. Is there a difference? Sophia stared at her best friend. Of course there's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like Victor saw someone he cared about struggling and tried to help. Maybe he went about it the wrong way, but his motives seem pretty clear. His motives were to manage me like one of his properties. Or to love you like someone he can't bear to see hurt. Sophia felt tears threaten again. You don't understand, Mia. Everything I thought I'd achieved, everything I was proud of, it was all him. The job, the apartment building, the recommendation letters that got me the interview in the first place. So what? Sophia stared at her. So what? So what if Victor opened some doors for you? You're the one who walked through them. You're the one who impressed Margaret Wilson in that interview. You're the one who did excellent work for 3 weeks before this all blew up. But, Sophia, do you think you got that job because you're sleeping with Victor, or because you're smart and capable and exactly what they were looking for? Sophia considered the question honestly. I think I'm qualified for the job. Then why does it matter how it happened? Rich people use connections all the time. Hell, Poor people use connections when they have them. The only difference is Victor had better connections to offer. Sophia felt something shift inside her chest. You really think it doesn't matter? I think what matters is whether Victor loves you and whether you love him. Everything else is just details. What if I can't trust him? Then you can't. But Sophia, in all the stories you've told me about Victor, has he ever actually lied to you? Sophia thought about it. He didn't tell me he owned the building when we first met. Because he was scared you'd treat him differently if you knew he was rich. Has he lied since then? Sophia had to admit that he hadn't. Omitted things. He made decisions without consulting her, absolutely. But outright lied? I don't know what to do, Sophia said quietly. What does your gut tell you? Before Sophia could answer, there was a knock at her door. Sophia looked at Mia, who shrugged. Could be Victor, Mia said. He's been calling me asking if you're okay. I'm not ready to see him. Then don't answer it. But the knocking continued, insistent and rhythmic. Finally, Sophia sighed and went to the door. Victor, I told you. But it wasn't Victor standing in her hallway. It was Isabella, holding a bottle of wine and wearing an expression of grim determination. We need to talk, Isabella said. Isabella, I can't. It's about Carlos Mendoza. And what he's really been up to. Sophia felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? Let me in, Sophia. You need to hear this. Against her better judgment, Sophia stepped aside. Isabella walked into the apartment, nodded politely to Mia, and set the wine on Sophia's kitchen counter. Carlos Mendoza has been stalking you, Isabella said without preamble. What? Victor hired a private investigator after you were suspended. We wanted to know how Carlos got those photos, how he knew where you worked. Isabella's expression was grim. Sophia, this man has been following you for weeks. He has pictures of you going to work, coming home, having dinner with Victor. He's been building a file on you. Sophia sank onto her couch, feeling sick. Why? Revenge. And money. Isabella pulled out her phone and showed Sophia a screenshot. He tried to sell the photos to a gossip blog first. When that didn't work, he went to your employer. Sophia stared at the screenshot, an email exchange between Carlos and someone at a celebrity gossip website. The subject line read, "Local janitor seduces millionaire." Oh my God, Sophia whispered. There's more, Isabella said gently. The private investigator found evidence that Carlos has been deliberately sabotaging your reputation at your old job. Spreading rumors, making up stories about your conduct. Why didn't Victor tell me this himself? Because you won't take his calls. Because you've convinced yourself that he's the villain here. Isabella sat down across from Sophia. Sophia, my brother has made mistakes. But he's not your enemy. Carlos is. Sophia felt everything she thought she knew shifting beneath her feet. I need to talk to Victor. He's at his office. He's been there for 3 days straight, trying to figure out how to fix this mess. Sophia stood up, then sat back down, then stood up again. I don't know what to say to him. Start with, I'm sorry, Mia suggested. I'm not the one who's been keeping secrets. No, Isabella said quietly. You're the one who assumed the worst about someone who loves you. The words hit Sophia hard. Because Isabella was right. When the crisis hit, Sophia's first instinct had been to assume Victor was manipulating her. She hadn't given him a chance to explain, hadn't trusted in the love she knew he felt for her. She'd been so afraid of being hurt that she'd hurt him instead. I've really screwed this up, haven't I? Sophia said. Nothing that can't be fixed, Isabella said with a smile. But you're going to have to swallow your pride and take the first step. Sophia looked at Mia, who nodded encouragingly. Then she looked at Isabella, who was watching her with hopeful eyes. Okay, Sophia said, reaching for her jacket. Let's go fix this. Sophia found Victor exactly where Isabella said he would be, in his office at Castillo Holdings, staring at his computer screen with the hollow-eyed look of a man who hadn't slept in days. She knocked on the glass door and watched him look up, watched surprise and hope and wariness chase each other across his face. Sophia. He stood slowly, like he wasn't sure she was really there. Can I come in? Victor nodded and Sophia stepped into his office, closing the door behind her. The space was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive furniture, city views, the kind of controlled perfection that spoke of success and loneliness in equal measure. Isabella told me about Carlos, Sophia said without preamble. Victor's jaw tightened. I wanted to tell you myself. I know. I wouldn't let you. Sophia took a deep breath. Victor, I owe you an apology. Sophia. No, let me say this. When everything fell apart, my first instinct was to assume you'd been manipulating me. I didn't give you a chance to explain, didn't trust what I knew about you. Sophia's voice caught. I was so scared of being hurt that I hurt you instead. Victor was quiet for a long moment, just looking at her. I understand why you reacted the way you did, he said finally. I made decisions about your life without consulting you. I kept things from you that I should have shared. You were trying to take care of me. I was trying to control the situation. There's a difference. Sophia stepped closer. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you saw someone you cared about struggling and tried to help. A ghost of a smile crossed Victor's face. Someone's been talking to Mia. Mia's a smart woman. Yes, she is. Victor's expression grew serious again. Sophia, I need you to know something. I didn't arrange your job interview. Sophia frowned. But Margaret said. Margaret Wilson called me 3 weeks ago asking for a reference for you. Apparently, your former supervisor at the building, not Peterson, one of the other managers, had recommended you for a position. When Margaret mentioned your name, I told her you were excellent at your job and that any company would be lucky to have you. Sophia felt her world shift again. You didn't set up the interview? I gave you a good reference. That's all. Victor ran a hand through his hair. Though I did buy your apartment building after you got the job. I wanted to make sure you had a safe place to live. I know it was wrong. I know I should have asked you first. But Sophia, have you seen the condition of that building? The wiring is shot, the plumbing is a disaster, and the heating system is held together with duct tape and prayer. I couldn't stand the thought of you living somewhere unsafe. Sophia stared at him, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes, the fear that had driven his decisions. You were scared for me. Terrified. The idea of something happening to you because I had the power to prevent it and didn't. Victor shook his head. I couldn't live with that. Sophia felt tears threatening again, but this time they were tears of love rather than heartbreak. You idiot. Victor's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? You beautiful, overprotective idiot. Sophia closed the distance between them, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. Do you have any idea how much I love you? Victor's eyes widened. Sophia. I love you, she said again, stronger this time. I love that you want to take care of me, even when you're terrible at asking permission first. I love that you see me as someone worth protecting. I love that you bought my building because you were worried about the heating system. I love you too, Victor said, his voice rough with emotion. More than I ever thought possible. Then let's stop being afraid of this, Sophia said. Let's stop assuming the worst about each other and start trusting what we know is true. Victor's arms came around her, pulling her against him like he was afraid she might disappear again. What do we know is true? That you love me and I love you. That we're both stubborn and scared and trying to figure this out as we go. that we're stronger together than we are apart. Victor's smile was bright and beautiful. Those sound like good things to build on. I think so too. And then Victor was kissing her, right there in his glass-walled office where anyone could see, and the romance novels had it right after all. Maybe love really could overcome any obstacle, any misunderstanding, any amount of fear and doubt. Maybe sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, you got exactly what you needed. But as Sophia kissed Victor back with all the love and hope in her heart, she had no idea that their happiest ending was just beginning. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the conference room at Pinnacle Property Management, presenting her quarterly report to the board of directors. The investigation into her hiring had concluded within 2 weeks. Margaret Wilson had been mortified to discover that Sophia had indeed been hired on her own merits, and the company had bent over backward to make amends. Sophia had not only been reinstated, she'd been promoted to senior property manager and given a raise that made her old salary look like pocket change. "Excellent work, Sophia," Margaret said as the board members filed out. "The renovation project on the Castillo portfolio is ahead of schedule and under budget." Sophia smiled. "Victor's buildings are a pleasure to work with. He actually maintains them properly. Unlike some of our other clients," Margaret said with a laugh. "Speaking of which, how are things going with you too?" Sophia's smile grew wider. "Really well." That was an understatement. The past 6 months had been a revelation. Once they'd learned to communicate honestly with each other, once Sophia had stopped assuming the worst and Victor had stopped trying to solve her problems without asking, they discovered that they fit together perfectly. Victor had met Mia and Sophia's book club, charming them all with his willingness to discuss romance novels with complete seriousness. Sophia had attended charity galas and business dinners, discovering that she could hold her own in Victor's world without losing herself in the process. They'd fought about Victor's tendency to make decisions unilaterally, about Sophia's stubbornness when it came to accepting help. But they'd learned to fight fair, to listen to each other, to find compromises that honored both their needs. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from Victor. "Dinner tonight? I have something I want to discuss with you." Sophia frowned slightly. Victor's discussions could range from choosing vacation destinations to major business decisions he wanted her input on. With Victor, you never knew. "Your place or mine?" she texted back. Sophia laughed. Victor's cooking had improved dramatically over the past 6 months, but it was still an adventure. "I'll bring dessert and a fire extinguisher." "Very funny. See you at 7. Sophia was still smiling as she packed up her things and headed home to change. She'd given up her tiny apartment 3 months ago and moved into Victor's penthouse. A decision that had taken weeks of discussion and negotiation but had ultimately felt right for both of them. Living with Victor had been an adjustment. He was neat to the point of obsession, liked to control the thermostat, and had strong opinions about thread counts and coffee beans. But he also made her laugh every day, listened to her venting about difficult clients with genuine interest, and had a way of making her feel like the most important person in his world. Sophia arrived at the penthouse to find the dining room table set with candles and flowers, Victor's best china, and an expression of nervous anticipation on Victor's face. "This looks serious," Sophia said, hanging up her jacket. "Define serious." Sophia studied his face more carefully. Victor was fidgeting, something he never did, and there was a brightness in his eyes that spoke of excitement and terror in equal measure. "Victor, what's going on?" "Dinner first," Victor said, leading her to the table. "Then we'll talk." Dinner was surprisingly good. Victor had been taking cooking classes, a fact Sophia had discovered when she'd found the class schedule hidden under a stack of business magazines. They talked about their days, about Sophia's upcoming presentation to a new client, about Victor's latest acquisition. But Sophia could sense Victor's nervous energy throughout the meal, the way he kept checking his watch, the way he barely touched his food. Finally, as Sophia was finishing her dessert, Victor stood up. "Sophia," he said, his voice formal and careful. "There's something I need to tell you." Sophia set down her fork, suddenly nervous. "Okay. When I met you in that elevator 6 months ago, I thought I knew what I wanted from life. Success, independence, control over every variable." Victor began pacing behind his chair. "I thought emotions were weaknesses, that caring about someone meant giving them power to hurt you. Victor, you changed everything," Victor continued. "You made me want things I'd never imagined wanting. You made me believe that maybe I could be more than just a successful businessman. That maybe I could be a good man, a man worthy of someone extraordinary." Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. "You are a good man." "Only with you," Victor said, echoing the words he'd spoken months ago in the building lobby. "Sophia, you've made me better than I ever thought I could be. You've given me a reason to come home at night, a reason to think about the future in terms of years instead of quarters." Sophia watched as Victor reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Oh my God," Sophia whispered. Victor dropped to one knee beside her chair, opening the box to reveal a ring that was absolutely perfect. Not too big, not too flashy, just a simple, elegant symbol of forever. "Sophia Reeves," Victor said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "Will you marry me?" Sophia stared at him, at this man who'd started as a stranger in an elevator and become the love of her life. She thought about all the reasons it shouldn't work, their different backgrounds, their stubborn personalities, the way they'd both been hurt before and had every reason to be afraid. Then she thought about the way Victor looked at her like she was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. About the way he listened to her dreams and fears with equal attention. About the way he'd learned to ask instead of assume, to trust instead of control. "Yes," Sophia said, the word coming out as barely more than a whisper. Victor's face broke into a grin that was pure joy. "Yes. Yes," Sophia said again, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you, you beautiful, overprotective, romantic cliché of a man." Victor slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that shook slightly, then stood and pulled her into his arms. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I love you too," Sophia replied, thinking that maybe the romance novels had it right after all. Maybe sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave and willing to take a leap of faith, you got your happily ever after. And maybe, just maybe, the best love stories started with getting stuck in an elevator with exactly the right person. Sophia stood in the bridal suite of the Plaza Hotel, staring at herself in the full-length mirror. The dress was perfect, simple, elegant, and far more expensive than anything she'd ever imagined wearing. But it was hers, chosen with Mia and Isabella after a day of shopping that had involved more champagne than actual decision-making. "You look beautiful," Mia said, adjusting Sophia's veil for the third time. "I look terrified," Sophia replied. "That's normal. Cold feet are totally normal." Sophia shook her head. "Not cold feet. Just overwhelmed, I guess. A year ago, I was a cleaning lady who got stuck in an elevator. Now I'm about to marry a millionaire and become the stepmother to a cat named Mr. Whiskers." Isabella laughed from her position by the window. "Victor doesn't have a cat." "Yet," Sophia said ominously. "But I'm working on it." There was a knock at the door, and Sophia's father appeared in the doorway. He looked uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo, but his smile was radiant. "Ready, Mija?" Sophia took a deep breath and nodded. She was ready. More than ready. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends in the hotel's garden terrace. Sophia had insisted on keeping it intimate, despite Victor's initial plans for something much grander. "I don't need 300 guests," Sophia had told him during one of their planning sessions. "I just need the people who matter." As Sophia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, she saw those people: Mia crying happy tears in the front row, Isabella beaming with pride, Margaret Wilson and several colleagues from Pinnacle Property Management, even some of Sophia's former co-workers from the building. But mostly she saw Victor. He was standing at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his hair styled to perfection, looking every inch the successful businessman he was. But his eyes were soft with love and wonder, and when he smiled at her, Sophia felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The ceremony was beautiful and brief. They'd written their own vows, and Victor's promise to love and protect her while still allowing her to fight her own battles made Sophia cry right through her carefully applied makeup. Sophia's vow to trust Victor's heart even when his methods drove her crazy made him laugh out loud, which wasn't exactly traditional but felt perfectly right. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said. "You may kiss the bride." Victor cupped Sophia's face in his hands, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Hello, Mrs. Castillo," he said softly. "Hello, husband," Sophia replied. And then Victor was kissing her, right there in front of God and their families and everyone who mattered, and Sophia thought that maybe the romance novels had understated things. Maybe real love was even better than fiction. Later, at the reception, Sophia found herself sitting at the head table, watching their guests dance and celebrate. Victor was beside her, his hand covering hers, his thumb rubbing gently over her wedding ring. "Any regrets?" Victor asked quietly. Sophia looked around the room, at Mia doing an impressive salsa with Sophia's cousin, at Isabella deep in conversation with Sophia's father about his landscaping business, at all the people from their different worlds coming together to celebrate their happiness. "Just one," Sophia said. Victor tensed. "What?" Sophia smiled and leaned closer to him. "I regret that it took us 6 months to get to this point. We could have been this happy so much sooner if we just trusted each other from the beginning." Victor's smile was relieved and tender. "Well, we'll just have to make up for lost time." "Is that a promise, Mr. Castillo?" "That's a guarantee, Mrs. Castillo." As Victor pulled her onto the dance area for their first dance as husband and wife, Sophia reflected on the strange turns life could take. A year ago, she'd been alone, working a job that barely paid the bills, convinced that love was something that happened to other people. Now she was dancing with her husband at their wedding reception, wearing a dress that was more expensive than she used to make in 6 months, surrounded by people who loved them both. "What are you thinking about?" Victor asked as they swayed to the music. "Elevators," Sophia said with a laugh. "Elevators? Just thinking that I should send a thank you note to whoever designed that building's elevator system. If it hadn't broken down that night, we would have found each other eventually," Victor said with certainty. "How can you be so sure?" Victor spun her around, then pulled her back into his arms. "Because some things are meant to be, Sophia. Some people are meant to find each other, no matter how many obstacles get in the way." Sophia looked up at her husband, brilliant, stubborn, romantic Victor who'd somehow seen past all her defenses to the woman underneath. "You know what?" she said. "What?" "I think you might be right." "Of course I'm right. I'm always right." Sophia laughed. "Don't push it, husband." "Wouldn't dream of it, wife." If you enjoyed this, you have to subscribe.